I'm someone who infiltrates extremist organizations professionally. And let me tell you the scariest thing that Donald Trump has done so far since he resumed the office of president. My name is Christopher Goldsmith. I'm a U.S. Army veteran, and I run two organizations, Task Force Butler Institute and Veterans Fighting Fascism. We are nonprofits that train veterans to conduct open source intelligence research into domestic extremist organizations. The purpose is we gather evidence of criminality, and then we provide it both to law enforcement and to victims so that those extremist organizations and extremist individuals can be held accountable in a court of law. And it is with this background and profession that I am telling you the worst thing that Donald Trump has done so far since he resumed the office of president is issue pardons to 1,500 American terrorists. Now, terrorism is a strong word, so let me be specific. I'm talking about the definition of terrorism. Definition of terrorism, federally, is the use of force or the threat of force to coerce a government or civilian population towards political ends. Now, while Biden's DOJ, Merrick Garland, as Attorney General, wasn't really brave enough to use that word, terrorism, to describe what happened on January 6, 2021, during the insurrection, the attack on the Capitol. That is precisely what happened. Our country was attacked, and the objective was political. It was to end our democracy and install a fascist dictator. And the only reason that nearly 1,500 people were put away for committing that grave crime against our democracy over the last 4 years is because of people like me. We are volunteer, patriotic Americans who went through terabytes of data looking for evidence of the specific individuals who committed specific acts of violence so that we could provide that to law enforcement, and law enforcement could then in turn submit it to a court, use it as evidence to convict terrorists. In the months leading up to January 6th, I was infiltrating organizations like the 3% Security Force, the 3%ers. And I was gathering evidence of them training for violence. I was gathering evidence and submitting it to the FBI of them staking out poll workers and intimidating them. Now, I'm not trying to scare you, but here's the truth. The FBI, federal law enforcement, could not possibly handle the January 6th case on their own. They do not have the personnel power or the computing power to have possibly gathered all of the evidence, analyzed it, and build cases about it. The FBI and the Department of Justice relied on regular American people, patriots who took time out of their day. Some quit their jobs. Some, like me, learned entirely new skills. And some, like some of my friends, risked their lives to infiltrate unlawful militias in person so that they could gather evidence of these criminal organizations and provide it to law enforcement. While the vast majority of the 1,500 who received pardons may never commit another crime, let me tell you something that many of those, especially those who are in the DC jail, became further radicalized while they were behind bars. For the MAGA movement, for the QAnon movement, these people became living martyrs. And now that their God King Donald Trump has issued full, complete, and unconditional pardons for them, these insurrectionists will have achieved essentially like a prophet-like status. They're not the God King Trump, but Trump has bestowed something special on them. There is a lot of money in these conspiracy theory circles that will be funneled into the January 6th insurrection crew. They will be able to travel the country over the next 4 years, and I guarantee this, and they will be proselytizing at events, at MAGA events. Donald Trump's going to invite these people up on stage, and they're going to further radicalize other MAGA heads, ultimately convincing them that political violence for the purpose of intimidating the government or a civilian population is acceptable. Not just acceptable, but something that should be encouraged. So where do we go from here? The Department of Justice and the FBI are under Trump's control, and he will do everything he can to stop January 6th insurrectionists from ever being held accountable criminally. I mean, that is what his executive order did. It granted a full, complete, and unconditional pardon to all of those, even the ones who committed assault against police officers. Even the ones who very clearly had conspired to commit violence by bringing things like baseball bats and hockey sticks and bear mace to the Capitol. We need to collectively, as a society, support those who are harmed, who were physically harmed on January 6, 2021. The evidence, the confessions, the testimonies of the criminality, of the guilty pleas from all of these cases, over 1,000 convictions, all of that evidence is now in the public domain. Americans need to be working to archive all of that evidence and we need to encourage those who were harmed to file suit in civil court. Donald Trump can pardon anyone he wants, but he cannot stop those who were harmed on January 6th from holding accountable their assaulters. The way that the right lionizes violent extremists, we need to do the same for these police officers who were assaulted on January 6th. We need to make sure that their livelihoods are protected. We need to make sure that they have the financial backing to engage in civil litigation against their attackers. And we need to make sure that they have the resources necessary to protect themselves and their families from vigilantes. If the far right is going to lionize and send money to violent extremists, we need to be willing to do the same for those who were willing to put their lives on the line and did risk their lives to protect our democracy.